Dear friends, in our divine mercy home that takes care of elderly, abandoned men, there was a person called George, a very tall man. Because he was very tall, he was known as Bada George. He was known as Bada George not only because of his height, but also he was big in heart. That's what all his friends, the other inmates, would tell me. He would go and listen to the sad stories of his companions. All of them had really tragic stories to tell of being abandoned by their own families, the terrible things that happened to them in their past. And that's why they landed in this home for the abandoned men. But George had no stories to tell. All the time, he would be either praying in the chapel or he would be playing cards with his companions or doing little work in the courtyard or listening to his friends, listening to the sad stories of his companions. But George died. He had no address to give us. But then his friends told me, Father, George used to call up someone in another city, in another state. He used to call up through the telephone exchange. So I went to the telephone exchange and asked the person there to check who he was calling. It is always the same number. And I called up that number. It was a woman who attended the call. I told that person, that woman, this man called George died. And it's a woman. She cried. And then she said to me, Father, I'm not able to come for the funeral. I'm in a home, paralyzed. And 2 days after, she sent me a little parcel. In that parcel, there was a flower with a card to my big dad and the request to place that flower and card on the grave of George. 2 days after, she called me up and she told me her story, the story of Beda George. This George was staying with his wife and their daughter. This woman, as a young girl, ran away with a married man. And the mother was so heartbroken, the mother committed suicide. And George could not live there anymore because of all the rumors about the wife and the daughter who ran away. He went to another place. Meanwhile, he was trying to contact his daughter. After a few years, this man with whom his daughter ran away, that man abandoned this girl with a child, little child. And she was talking to her dad. The dad would console her, comfort her. And this woman trying to bring up the child, an auto rickshaw came and hit her. And she fell and got paralyzed. The child was in some home, orphanage of Mother Teresa. And George all the time was working hard, some odd jobs, sending money to her for her maintenance and for the child. This is the story of George. And she told me, my dad, I could not make him happy anyway. I made a terrible mistake. My mother paid for my mistake. My father had only sad memories. And yet, she said to me, my father would never blame me for that, for the big mistake I had done. My father supported me till the end, till he was not able to do any work anymore. And that's when he came here. And he used to offer all that sadness to the Lord in the chapel. His friends told me, when he prays in the chapel, every now and then, a drop of tear would roll down his face. That's the way he found solace in the presence of God. After having found solace and comfort in the presence of God, he could comfort everyone else. Beda George, with a big heart. What is greatness? What does it mean to become better, great? Well, there are great people in politics. There are great people in science, in economic structures, in our society. What's the norm of greatness? Whatever the norm of greatness may be, I found greatness in this man. He could unburden himself in the presence of the Lord and fill his heart with love so that he could make everyone happy. I still remember the hearty laughter of Beda George, a laughter that came from a big heart. My dear friends, there are tragic things that happen to us. Unwanted experiences that break our lives. What attitude do we take to those experiences, tragic experiences of our life? That attitude will determine whether we are big, great, or we are narrow and small. Greatness is to find joy in the presence of God, unburden ourselves in the presence of God, and be able to forget it all and make others happy. Bring greatness into the lives of others. I believe that self-forgetfulness, that self-giving is what makes our life great.